everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Realm podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts,
Holly Robilliard.
Austin Matthews.
And Bob Adato. And today we're going to talk about crafting the perfect villain with Christopher Michael Blake. Hey, how you doing?
How's it going, everybody?
Hey, we're so happy to have you
Welcome.
on. Tell us about yourself. You got any books or?
So I was fortunate enough to meet Bob back in, what was it, 2022 now?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, at the Writer's Realm podcast, right? We not the Writer's Realm podcast, but the Writer's Realm, right? Realm Makers.
That's okay. I like
And,
where you're
It all
going
gets
with
confusing, right?
that. I like where you're
Well,
going
look,
with
I'm trying
that,
to promote you guys. It's okay.
Yeah,
you know.
big time. Yeah, I love that.
So, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was kind of the black sheep of the room at the time. Bob even thanked me for being there, if I remember, saying, "Hey, thank you for coming because we don't get a lot of horror authors here. Everybody in the room was kind of hobbits and dragons and fantasy." So it was definitely a change for me to be there, and I had a good time. It was an awesome time there. I have written 4 books. I have 3 on deck for next year. Don't ask me how I find the time to do that.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm also in the process of, if you haven't seen my shirt yet, it says Crimson Harvest.
Hmm.
I wrote a screenplay for a movie, and the movie's being made right now.
Oh,
gosh.
It's in pre-production. Yeah.
That is nuts.
So it's gonna possibly star Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp.
Oh my gosh, dude, this is sick.
That's amazing. I'm so excited. I'm a huge horror fan, so I'm extra excited now.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I already have questions. Well, first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, where can we find you, though? Where can some new readers find you?
So I'm at www.christophermichaelblake.com. I also run a podcast when I'm not writing 3 books and writing scripts and having my 7-year-old raise me. And I'm pretty sure that I'll be broadcasting my podcast soon from the Burger King parking lot down the street once my wife throws me out of here for being up and doing this at night. Yeah, that's realgeekmedia.com. We're on YouTube as well. We cover the movies and we cover weird news and box office results and things of that nature. Because again, we're just fans of movies, like most people are.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I'm also on Instagram, Facebook,
Okay.
TikTok. Unfortunately, I don't want to be on there, but I got. You might see me dancing on there. It's okay.
Yeah. I think that's Holly's big social media platform, isn't it, Holly?
It's a popular place these days.
I'll tell you what, I was talking with an author at a HorrorCon 2 weeks ago, and he said he got a check for $1,300, which subsidized him for the month for TikTok.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
Crazy.
he's
Doing what?
doing
Dancing?
really well with it. No, he says he's just being genuine, and he puts a lot of questions out there to the audience and tries to get feedback. And a couple of his TikTok views have gone viral. A million. Not that I'm here to promote him, but it's Damon Mannix.
Okay.
And he's a horror author as well, and he has a couple of his TikTok videos have gone over 1 million views. So he's definitely gone viral a couple times.
All right. Holly,
awesome.
Let's go.
No pressure.
Carry the rest of us,
right? I know. I'll be on there with my 5 views.
It's tough getting viewers for YouTube. We're on 18 subscribers for Real Geek Media. We just started in January, and the way that they want to monetize nowadays is just crazy because you need 1,000 viewers, subscribers, and then 300,000 minutes of. It's very difficult for somebody breaking into the platform to get paid to do what they're doing.
Oh, my first question, Christopher. I mean, horror author. So you got books out. What's the names of your books?
So I have Pray for Dawn, Pyramid of the Parasite, The Cape May Murders, and Seance. It's start of a series. It's clean fiction, actually, which is definitely a break for me. I never thought back in 2021 or 2022 when I was first going to Realm Makers, I saw the clean fiction in the room. I was like, that's not for me. And I was so wrong. I really enjoyed writing. It was a witchy teenage book, like Mean Girls casting spells, I guess. So,
that sounds fun. Yeah, so right away, I have to ask about your movie and how did you have all these connections with anyone? I don't know. Like that's not. I'm pretty sure this is not easy to get into, right? You write a screenplay and then send it off to people.
No. You know, I, I'm a huge believer in God. I pray to him every morning. I don't always agree with his decisions, but he puts me in the right place at the right time, and he has taken care of me through. I mean, I can actually point out the steps in my life that he has kind of ordained. And whether it's been college, how I picked my college, the phone was ringing in my house. I picked it up. Hey, do you know you're eligible for a scholarship? Boom. That was
Okay.
as easy as it got. I mean, I
Wow.
didn't have to go out and the job that the 9 to 5 that I currently work. A guy who I went to school with showed up and said, "Here, fill out this application." And 25 years later, I'm eligible to retire.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
even something so small as my daughter being born. My wife had a stroke before uh, we had gotten married, and the doctors had told her she would never be able to have children.
Mm.
We have a 7-year-old now.
Wow.
So it's just the small things like that. And it's the same thing with the script. Let me get back to your question. I'm standing there at New Jersey HorrorCon, and Xander Goldman, who's a movie actor and producer, he came over to me and said, "You ever written a script before?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I have." And we go back to the small things. I have a friend who lived down in Florida. I worked with him for 20 years. He wrote 6 books. He never told me. Well, fast forward, I find out about it. I call him up, say, "Hey, how did you write all these books? And how can I write a book? Because I have one written." And he said, "If you have something written, send it to my publisher." 2 weeks later, I had a publishing deal.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, right. If it was that easy all the time,
Goodness
but
gracious.
things happened. It wasn't the best of deals for me. I now went indie with my publishing, and it's the best decision I've ever made.
Mm.
And fast forward, me and him were working on a script together. He passed away last October.
Mm.
So when Xander came up to me, he goes, "Have you ever worked on a script before?" I had that experience.
Mhm.
So I said, "Yes, I have." He goes, "Well, we kind of got into the details of it. What do you think about this idea? What do you think about this idea?" So it wasn't based on anything that I had written previously.
Mm.
So in October, he came to me, and by December, I had a script to him.
Wow.
And he
Wow.
said, "I don't like the script, total rewrite." And
Okay.
I said, "Not a problem." So total rewrite. And what's going to happen is that anytime you write a script, and this is what they don't tell you, well, Save the Cat did tell me. I'm a huge believer in, if you haven't read those books, the Save the Cat books on screenwriting or book writing
Hmm.
or fiction writing, he tells you straight up, you're going to have rewrites, and don't get married to your characters. Things are going to change. Characters are going to be added. Studios are going to want some things. The director's going to want something. Whatever it takes to get the project on is the attitude you need to have. Being
Just
right
standard.
place, right time. That's
Yeah.
all it was. Right place, right time.
And now this movie's getting made, and it's called Crimson Rain.
Crimson Harvest with a Z.
Harvest.
Yeah. It's on Indiegogo right now, so they are looking for roles. So if you're one to be in a movie,
Okay.
particularly with Felisa Rose,
Right.
this is your opportunity to get involved.
Here we are.
It will be filming here in New Jersey.
I don't
believe
need
there's
any acting experience, right? I have no
no
idea what I'm
acting
doing.
experience
I'm
whatsoever.
right on. I'm
Just-
perfect for the job.
Unfortunately, I'm not very photogenic, so I stay in the background. That's my thing.
Holly and Austin are extremely photogenic, so they're going to be heading over. They're gonna be
Consider
heading over
donating.
to New
I mean, this
Jersey.
is your opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. You get killed by the scarecrow.
I hope so.
There
Excellent.
you go.
Yes.
Or if I could be the scarecrow, that'd be even best. The best. I absolutely want to be the villain. That would be
He's not
so
the
amazing.
villain, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
he's
He's,
not.
well, no
Oh.
spoils, but yeah, that's.
Oh.
Well, apparently.
We'll get into that. Fits in with the theme for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we're talking about crafting the perfect villain. Input. What's Christopher's input on this?
So I will never tell you I've crafted the perfect villain, but I will tell you that they need to have a strong motivation or desire for. It just can't be, I'm a bad person because I'm a bad person. You have to be able to empathize with what the villain, quote unquote, wants, because they don't view themselves as the villain.
Right.
They view themselves as somebody who's trying to do
Mhm.
justice or revenge
Mhm.
for a purpose, for an aim, to make things square, to make things right. and you have to be able to buy into their point of view.
Mhm.
So that's my take on it. It doesn't get any more in depth than that. It's
Right.
it's pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody because it's like you often hear like everybody's the hero of their own story, but like I think looking at it in the opposite way is like everybody is the villain in somebody's story too. And like if you look at that, it's like I was even seeing a breakdown where it's like in the Goofy movie, Goofy is the villain. Like he is the villain of that movie because his son Max is the protagonist. And so it's like anybody can be a villain from the right perspective.
Yeah.
And it's like Goofy has a very valid motivation to want to spend time with his son, but he's the villain still. And it's like it has a very relatable like theme as an adult. I'm like, yeah, I just want to spend time with my kids. But like at a certain point in their life, that's going to be the worst thing in the world to them.
Yeah.
That's what I love about books that have multiple POVs. Is you can
Mm-hmm.
have a villain person's point of view, like they're just the worst person, and then you see them with the other person and they're like this really great, wonderful person. And so it's like you as a reader have this internal conflict about bad person, or are they a good person, or am I seeing it from a wrong way, or is there something that I just don't understand about them? And it's just so interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can definitely get into that idea of like, is it just the protagonist bias that I see it that way? So, it's the whole thing of like the orcs and Sauron were the good guys the whole time. You just didn't know. You just saw it from the elves' perspective.
Yeah. From their point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
And Gollum has Uber Eats apparently down to that cave, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting as well when you're going through and you're reading, especially when it comes to villains, because I think so many people, now that I've noticed, at least with the fantasy trends right now, is that everyone wants them to be this like very dark, everything about them is like, obsidian black or raven black hair, or everything's dark, 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 or crimson red for blood. And everything about their personality is built around that. And it's like, I feel like sometimes we've forgotten to get creative with villain characters because we just think we associate these things with being bad now.
Mhm.
And so it's really interesting. Like it's hard to see different twists on that now because everyone's focusing on one, idea of what bad is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's something to talk about too. Because in most of my books, except for the main antagonist, who's very charming and very handsome, everybody else has a scar down their face. You know what I mean? Like yeah, you're right. You dress them up in black, you put a scar on them, or you give them different colored eyes, or big giant horns and a tail, or something like that.
Mhm.
But that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like I don't really necessarily usually write like villains. Like I write antagonists. So it's like they're normal people, and like to Holly's point, like you do get POVs. Sometimes a book is half and half. So it's half from the protagonist view, it's half from the antagonist view, or theoretically the two different protagonists seeing each other as their own antagonists. And so it's like seeing the villain that way. It's like, yeah, they can be the knight in shining armor, but they're also the villain. And so it's just a matter of like, how can I take this thing that is like even seen as like holy or righteous and be like, well, maybe we should question that too. And that just assuming that something being pretty makes it good is a very dangerous perspective to take.
Okay.
Which is one reason I like Fae as villains, because it's like they tend to be, oh, hey, look at me, it's a fairy, it's all nice and lovely, and then they, eat you. So
or they trick you.
That's the nicer ones, I guess.
Yeah. Well, should the villain be pure evil? Because in my experience, limited experience, both reading and writing and watching movies, I think my first intro to an evil character was Darth Vader from A New Hope, episode 4, A New Hope. And then he changed, like by Return of the Jedi, he had changed, and so now he wasn't evil anymore, which was boring. I want him to be like in Rogue One.
Well, you always have
I need him
Palpatine.
to be, yeah, exactly. So how about that? How about a villain? If you're crafting a perfect villain, do they have to be pure evil?
Mm,
No, I don't necessarily think so. I think that
hmm
like all people, everybody's got that soft spot for them. When I wrote Pray for Dawn, the main bad guy is not the cannibals. The main subject of the story is just how horrible. And I think most horror movies go like this too. It's not how bad the bad guy is, but
Mhm.
how bad we as people are to one another.
Mhm.
mm,
And what I
hmm
mean by that is you watch any kind of monster movie or
Mhm.
Friday the 13th or Freddy Krueger. And then you got the bad people, you got Freddy Krueger who's going around killing people, but you had the backstory of the really terrible people doing bad things.
Right.
hmm
It's, I mean, I remember playing games when I was a little boy, and we played tag where we have somebody be it.
hmm
And when you found it and he cornered you and you were with your friend would push you to it so they wouldn't get caught. So you were almost
Yeah.
pushed in
Yeah. I
front,
was,
Yeah.
and so again, it doesn't make you a bad person. You were friends up to that point, but it's kind of survival of the fittest at that point. And
Right.
hey, I don't run so fast, but you know,
yeah.
get
Hey, as
this.
long as you're not the slowest in the pack. But yeah, like I think that raises a really good point. It's like it's one of those things like, yeah, the monster's scary, but like the idea that like what you think you can trust may not be reality is way more terrifying because it's like to your point, it's like if we're both running away, we're running to the house, you run a little bit faster, you close the door and lock it. I'm more afraid of that moment than just the monster showing up. Like that moment becomes like doubly terrifying.
I think it's really cool now that there's this big like push for people that are morally gray, right? Because that's where, villains come in, where you're getting that multiple perspective because it's like
Hmm
Yeah.
they're bad, but are they? Or, because they're
Right.
doing it for what they believe are good reasons.
Right.
So it's been very interesting, I think, reading through some books lately and seeing a lot of that.
Hmm. Yeah.
I,
I will say in this my fourth book was released yesterday. Oh, we didn't even cover what we're up to. I'm sorry, guys.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
well, there you
Congratulations.
go.
We should have. So I guess we can each, as we add our own input to these topics, we can discuss where. Oh, by the way, I won 14 awards, and anyway. But yeah, so yeah, book four was released yesterday, but it was revealed where my antagonist, uh, James Ronan Moriarty, he reveals why he's been killing all these people and creating all these incredibly dark, twisted clues for my protagonist to find is because he wants to make her stronger because there's an eldritch horror from space coming in, like is he's coming, right? And like
hmm
that's the biggest, like we have to stop that, but I couldn't just point him out to you. He's saying like you need to like follow the trail of bodies that I'm leaving for you to make you stronger so you can so we can figure out how to. So it is kind of like what Holly's was talking about. And well, the motivation too, where Christopher, what you mentioned also, like what's their motivation, and his motivation is to like create like a super team, if you will, of people to defeat a greater evil, but he has to
hmm
kill other people to do that, which is, and they're not even bad people either. That he doesn't care, they're just like mostly innocents.
hmm
But like he doesn't care, like that's, what I mean, like the end of is what the end goal is, what he's looking at.
Yeah. And like just thinking about like the whole thing of like being morally gray, and I think I enjoy the other side of it where it's like not do I lighten my villains, but like I really enjoy kind of darkening my protagonist because I think that like really gets you down in the grittiness of it. And as far as where we've been lately, I just finished the second book in the King Killer Chronicles, and I first book, top 5 books for me all time. Second book, bottom 5 books for me of all time. And part of it is that like the main character can do no wrong. Even when he messes up, it works all in his favor. And like I just don't like that in a protagonist for me. Like I want to see them fail and fail spectacularly and suffer for it. And I think that's the side of the morally gray that I enjoy is the grittiness of like there are real consequences to actions. I don't trip into success. I actually have to live with it. And like maybe I have to go apologize because I said something stupid. And like you don't see protagonists having to actually deal with a lot of consequences and a lot of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you get a little bit more realism. And like a deeper meaning to books is whenever you have to, actually deal with like, hey, yeah, you stopped the bad guy, but you murdered 300 people on the way to do it, and now you're going to prison.
Yeah. And now you're going to prison. Christopher, with your other books, do you have so your first book was more about, I'm talking about your villain, was more about the characterizations of people that, like the deep-seated whatever that's inside of them comes out under pressure and stress, right?
No, I would say it's for Dominic Cross, you're talking about the first villain for Pray for Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
He's a motorcycle gang guy. He's not a nice guy. He just got out of prison. He wants to reconnect with his former group, but they're kind of under FBI surveillance. He's looking for a quick score, and he's using this female to kind of, he's dating this female who's already married, and she offers him an easy, quick cash settlement to off her husband. But at the end of the book, things aren't as clear. And I kind of wrote some other stuff along with that character, and I never published it because I never thought it was gritty enough. It's okay, but it's not. I don't think it's published. The second book I think is good. Like Austin was saying, if I could publish that as a standalone, but you need the first book first, and I have the third book, and the third one just sucks, and I'm like, I really just can't even. I just know. I mean, look, we all have that dark. I think what they call it, the dark moment of the soul for an author. It's like, oh, this is no good. No one's gonna read this.
Yeah.
And I keep going over these books. I wrote them back in 2018, and I'm just sitting on them, and I'm like, what do I do with this stuff? But no, I don't think that a character can be. I'm watching The Boys right now. On Prime.
Good show.
Good show. And the main bad guy is obviously Homelander.
Yeah.
But Homelander is not morally great in his own eyes.
No.
He has one fascination, is to be loved. That's all he wants, is to be loved. And that's not a horrible trait for a person to have, is to be loved. Now, how he goes about getting it, it's a little sketchy and shady, when you're a total narcissist blowing people's heads off.
Right.
But yeah, it's.
But they earned it.
Oh, well, look, you throw a can at my son. We can't have that.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not cool.
No. So, but again, it's not about just being gray. I think it's what's going to take to cross that line. He's definitely a narcissist. He's definitely all about himself. He believes he's the smartest person in the room, no matter what anybody can tell him. And if you're not on board with all this, well, you could be replaced or worse.
Yeah.
So,
and too, like on that point, like thinking about that, it's like being morally gray for the sake of being morally gray, then you're just like an edgelord character doing all the like, oh, look at me. But like, it's that essence of reality where it's like, nobody's perfect, and that's fine. We don't want to be a book full of Mary Sue's. Like, it's fine to have flaws, and that's what makes characters interesting, actually. Otherwise, you end up with Harry Potter, who I can only describe as the chosen one. Like, I think like he has no real unique qualifiers to him other than that. And so it's like, without those bits of reality to cling to, it's like I don't get emotionally attached to those characters. So whether they're good or bad.
Dude, that's a good question. Can we write such a good villain that we want our readers to get emotionally attached to them?
So I will say my book that I'm working on for next year, it follows a character through their hero's journey, and they get to that moment where like, hey, like I've gotten the council and everybody's going to come to the rescue of my entire city and save them. And the council goes, no, we're not going to save your people. All his people get wiped out. And then the second half of the book is him taking a villain's journey as he returns home. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to join the bad guys that killed off my entire people, and I'm going to do it to the rest of the world because they abandoned my people. And so it's like, you get to be like, he is pure evil by the end of it. But he's like, I've got nothing to be good left. Like, there's no reason for me to be good left in the world. So,
wow, what a brat!
Wow.
Hey, I mean, he's just dishing out their own, poison. So
you're right. Yeah.
I like to have layers of villains. So my most recent book, which is now done off it's formatted, it's been sent away. I am no longer able to touch it anymore. I'm so glad that it's over with.
Now you said, wait, Holly, you said it's in the hands of an agent, right? An agent asked for it.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
out on a full request, which is exciting. Doesn't really mean anything, but still I'm taking that as a huge
I
compliment
mean,
to
it
me.
means
is.
something.
I
Yes,
was
it
quite
does.
excited. Quite excited after a lot of rejection letters on that one.
Yeah.
But the book,
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm hesitantly optimistic. But I'm still planning on, I'm still following along with getting it ready for indie publishing and everything. So I've sent it out and it's been formatted and it's all ready to go. And I've got my pre-orders coming from Ingram Sparks and all that stuff for me just to look over. So I'm excited. So, but now I can do nothing with it, which means I have all this free time to work on my next book.
Good, because
But
I'm looking
anyways,
forward to chapters. So
yeah, they're coming very quickly. But my book, it was really cool because my main character is a bit morally gray. And
mhm.
so for, to some of the other characters, they would look at her and be like, you are a traitor to your own kind. Like you're out there killing your own people. That's not okay. But she does it for, reasons that, they've done horrible things or whatever.
And gold.
Um, and gold and for money. But then on top of that, I also have another villain who, is like the real problem in this whole story. And so it's really fun sometimes, I think, because you can sneak in those, multiple layers of villains. And again, it comes back to what is a villain, because is she really a villain, especially
Mhm.
compared to this person who's actually out there trying to just kill people, because she's got all these other plans for herself. And so I've been really liking that because it's allowed me to slip in that morally gray, but still have
Mhm.
another character who's just like absolutely rotten. Now, she's not
Yes.
rotten just for the sake of being rotten, but she, in this book, which
Right.
spins into the other one, we kind of see a little bit like she feels betrayed by her family, and that's kind of the root of this. But there's still, as of right now, it looks like she's just this absolutely horrible witch.
Mm,
So it's been really fun to play with, to be able to have like a little bit of
Mhm.
both of them.
mm,
Yeah. And to that point, I think it was Brandon Sanderson on his podcast a couple of weeks ago was talking about that. And it's like in Lord of the Rings, it's like you can have Gollum be that weird morally gray where it's like, oh, I want him to be redeemed even because you have Saruman and Sauron that are like those bigger, more, idea of pure evil out there. But I mean, even Saruman, it's like he used to be the head of the council. Like you've got these layers of that evilness, and it's like as they get more and more removed from the story, you can make them the bigger icons, so you can kind of hope for that emotional connection with the evil character. And like, oh man, wouldn't it be fun if they could be redeemed and that?
mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, too, like how many bad things does someone have to do to become a villain, right? Because everyone does things that are wrong. That's how we have conflict in a story. So
Mhm.
it's like, are you a villain because you've done this many bad things, or because you don't care, or
Right.
it's a fine line, I think.
Mm,
yeah, I snoozed my alarm one time, and now I'm a villain. So that's how it works.
yeah. Yep. Yep. You're right. I always knew it. It's
I mean,
still
on the
full.
podcast, I definitely have to be the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
Like of the three of us, that's my role.
But you're still photogenic, so that you've got that going. So that's
That's the one thing I've got going, I guess.
good. Yeah.
It's the beard. It does it for me.
Yeah. How about I have to touch on this because I was on a panel a couple years ago. Um, it was on Twitch and it was a lot of fun. I gotta see how I can get back in there, but it was about crafting villains, and
Mhm.
I wanted to just touch on when you're crafting your villain to be very careful when you're portraying a someone with a mental illness,
Mm.
because I feel like take Psycho for instance, the movie Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, right? It was, I mean, spoiler alert, it wasn't mom, it was actually the son, but he was yeah, when you see the movie as, oh yeah, he's mentally ill. I don't know, I'm not sure what it is, but like something is definitely going on. But we just have to be careful with like, we don't want to portray schizophrenia, um or any other, I mean, we could make anything mental illness,
Yeah.
but just be careful. Like, it doesn't mean all schizophrenics are, what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
obviously,
And,
Mhm.
but
and
we don't want to give our readers that, like, oh wow, he thinks, you know, all villains or have mental illness or something.
Yeah, or the reverse, that all people with mental illness are villains. And like I think something that we can do to help combat that is that, like, if you look at you're writing a story, if only one character has a mental illness and is your villain, then you're probably doing it wrong, because you should be, including them on every part of their story. So like whether it's, talking about mental illness or race or gender, like all of those kinds of inclusion should be all across the book, whether it's, socioeconomic status, good versus evil, they're all across the spectrum. Everyone is just, people.
Yeah.
I also don't think that there's any, if you're writing a character and there's like one thing that makes them a villain, then you're not doing it right. Because there might be one event or one thing that happens that triggers all of the things. But no matter what happens to you in your life, you don't just wake up one day after one thing happens and you're like, that's it, I'm done, that's it. That's not how it works. That's not how real life works, thankfully. But yeah, there's a whole series of events, and there's all kinds of little things that are going to be changing in their life over time that are going to, sour them and make them become that person and harden them on the inside. And so those are things, like, to your point, it's not just that one thing. There has to be other things to go along with it.
Like we're talking about multiple layers.
Yeah, and to that point too, it's like when you're thinking through your protagonist, like you can think through, okay, this is like the hero's journey that they go on, because heroes don't just wake up and go, oh, I'm going to be a hero now. Like they have to go through a journey, and they don't have to be the reluctant hero. They can decide to go on a journey, but it is a journey where they're growing and developing. And so I think thinking about your villain in that same way, they didn't just wake up and decide to be, they might have just snapped, but like realistically, they probably went on a journey. Something caused that. And so what is it for this character? It doesn't have to be something dramatic like, oh, my entire, city was wiped off. Like I have somebody who's just like, yeah, I'm convinced that like I am the only person that can save the world, and I need to put down everybody who's going to stand in my way before they even know what's happening. And like that's how he starts his villain's journey, is like he thinks he's on a hero's journey.
Right. Yeah. What are some other characteristics, Christopher? You kind of mentioned about, when you're making a villain, start with motivation, revenge, a power grab, maybe. What else would there be? What are some other examples?
I think my favorite is the level of just being heinous. And I know when I wrote the Cape May murders, the murders themselves, it's a mystery book, by the way. It's so not horror, but the deaths in there are so much more gruesome than anything that I wrote for Pray for Dawn or the science fiction thriller I have, Pyramid of the Parasite. It's just, I mean, I take the deaths to the extreme. Again, if you're gonna go all out, let's go all out. Let's not pull any punches here. You want to make sure that it's better to be the person who hits the person in the face than take the punch. Right? I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You'd rather throw the punch, and
Yeah.
So it's the same way. If you're gonna go all out and kill somebody, let's do it in as dramatic fashion as you can. I mean, why not?
Right.
Go all out.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your villain in that book? The Cape May murders?
So I'll give you the plot point, because again, I go through the pitch. It's probably the best selling book I've ever had.
Nice.
Wasn't even planning on being published at one point. I needed a gap in between Pray for Dawn and Pyramid of the Parasite. And I remember showing you the cover for the book when we went to Realm Makers in 2022, saying this is what I was working on.
Right.
And I put it on Kindle Vella. And I think Kindle Vella's, don't sue me for this, is a Ponzi scheme. But that's just, I really believe, because you're trading reads with people. I mean, that's what it is. And you have to constantly promote your work, and you have to spend money to earn coins to get other people to read your stuff, and you're trading. So it's whoever ends up with the most coins wins. It's a Ponzi scheme. That's just my opinion. Don't ban me, Amazon, please.
Yeah.
I don't get many sales, but I go through you, so please.
Luckily they don't listen to us, so we're good to go.
Well, that's okay. Alexa does, though. So.
But,
always.
Anyways, your Cape May murders.
But basically, it's set 5 days before Halloween. There's a retiring chief of police. He's not necessarily the nicest of people, and a woman reappears. She's been missing for 25 years. She's got amnesia. And at the same time, there's a killer dressed up like the Grim Reaper, killing off Cape May stakeholders. And Chief Browning knows he's on that list. And he has to figure out how these two mysteries coincide and connect before becoming the next victim.
Hmm.
And again, you can sit there and say, well, obviously the person doing the killings, he's a bad person. But Chief Browning is not a nice person, but he has redeeming qualities. You find out later on there's other things that happened in his story that redeem him for what he did. I'm not saying absolve, because that's a wholly different thing. And
well, we got the villain part, we got like the person part, but I think, Austin, you brought the fact that an antagonist is different than a villain. Like,
yeah. And I think something I've often seen pointed to as well is, it was brought up earlier, the save the cat structure. And in the same way that a lot of people use the save the cat moment to like, oh, here's how you know the antagonist is a good guy. It's the kick the dog moment, where it's like, what is the thing that you use to set up your villain as being a villain instead of just an antagonist? It's like, how do you know this is actually a bad person and I'm supposed to be rooting against this person? So traditional example is kicking a dog, because instant villain.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Nobody, and he needs to die by the third act or something.
I'm going to steal that, by the way. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
I got no problem telling you what I'm stealing, so I have no problem.
Hey, there you go.
Kicking the dog.
I stole it from somebody else and I don't remember who.
Kick the dog. You guys are awful. I don't want to talk about
that. I don't know that I've ever had anybody actually farm an animal outside of, like, you know, a horse getting killed in combat or something. So for whatever reason, it's not, it doesn't come up, even though I write some horror and stuff. Right. So, well, I guess there's cows in a slaughterhouse, but that's fine. So
that's I was okay. Now that you mentioned it, I'm thinking about that. I'm watching House of Dragons right now, and someone does that. One of the guys, he kicks a dog, and I was just immediately like, and then he picks it up later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is this like what is happening with this dog? I see them taking him on a leash somewhere, and I'm like immediately on Google, like, is something happening to this dog? Because I'm skipping this episode. Like, I'm out. He kicked it, and now he's taking it somewhere. This can't be good. I'm out.
It's called dinner. It's fine.
Oh, no. So we have the villain, usually a person. I think that's what we're talking about, and hopefully we've covered all the bases. But antagonists, hordes of zombies, environmental could be an antagonist. You know, like two people, going against a snowstorm, or trying to get from one spot to another, and that's what's against them. You could have an animal like Peter Benchley's Jaws was. He's just doing his thing. He's not intentionally, crafting any schemes. He just wants to eat. So
I will say one of my favorite combinations where it's like sort of intentional, sort of not, is Alien. So it's like you got the alien infestation, like that's the monster of, like, the classic set. But I'm the weirdo, and I really like the prequels because David as a villain is just so choice to me. Michael Fassbender, anything with him, I'll watch it. But that motivation, like, it's like, okay, he doesn't want power, he doesn't want, influence or fame or any of that. He just is curious. And I think that's one of the more insidious things to me. It's like, oh, I just did it to see what would happen. And the idea of that is just like the most mortifying. And I think that is something that comes up a lot in my books. Like what y'all are reading right now, it's like both of the characters in it are like kind of evil just because of, like, they were curious what would happen. Like, I think that's something I constantly come back to, is how dangerous it can be.
So what about intelligence level? Do you feel like villains have to be extremely intelligent? Because I mean, if a villain is stupid, or if they just, are not very bright, then how are they getting away with all these things? Like, so I don't know that I can recall a story that I've read where the villain was not incredibly intelligent and have, because they have this whole grand scheme, all these great plans. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Christopher, what are your thoughts on that?
So I have 2 points. The first is I totally agree with Holly. You look at probably the best villain in the movies in the last 100 years, probably Alan Rickman and probably Die Hard, I would guess.
God,
right?
Excellent. Excellent
Again,
choice. Thank you.
always one step ahead of everybody.
Interesting.
Very
Love
intelligent.
that. Yeah.
I just got
Hans
done 2 weeks
Gruber.
ago. Oh, Hans Gruber, yes, off the Nakatomi building. Yeah. But we just got done watching The Last Boy Scout
that was a
on
fun
Real
movie.
Geekpedia.
Yeah.
I thought it was 30 years ago, and now I can't stand it. I found out that I looked at the movie and I was like, every villain in the movie wants to go on a whole little soliloquy and let Bruce Willis tell his jokes. When a bullet to the kneecap would simply just do the job. And he lets them all get away. And it's just, oh, what are you doing? And then the beginning of the movie makes no sense. And it's like, why is Billy Blanks drop kicking this guy before he pulls a gun out? And I don't understand. It doesn't have anything to do with the movie. And why is this why is he dancing the jig at the end? I didn't
understand that part either. You're right.
So dumb characters, absolutely. Hollywood's got a bunch of them. They're out there. I just have to go back, because again, when Last Boy Scout came out, we were all younger, and it was like, oh, the one-liners are cool, and Shane Black, and the guy's the Predator, yeah, absolutely. And now it's like, oh, what was I thinking? I must have been on a hangover back then.
But you're right. Okay, so another incredibly Austin, stop it.
I am gonna disagree that a villain needs to be intelligent.
Okay,
because
go for it. Yeah.
No Country
I thought we
for
were
Old
going to
Men.
get through a whole episode without Austin disagreeing on something.
I've disagreed at like every point, but like I think
so
of like
close.
villains like No Country for Old Men. It's not about intelligence. He's just
that's a good one.
And it's the same thing with Two-Face in the new Batman movies. It's not that he's intelligent. He's just walking around doing it. He doesn't have to plan everything out. It's just the idea of that chaos, and that is the scariness of it. Is like there isn't a plan.
Yeah, that's true.
And plus, the aliens didn't have a plan. The xenomorphs were just murdering everybody up in there.
Yeah, that's what they do.
But Wayland Yugatani is actually the villain because of what they're planning on doing. They want to bring these xenomorphs back and study them, and of course, once they come back to Earth, it's going to be over. I mean, that's a wrap.
Yeah, but you could also argue that Wayland Yutani were not intelligent. So the master plan was not great.
That's interesting, actually, now that I think about that, because you could have, if you're writing a story that's not fantasy or not sci-fi, it's very real life, and your villain is just your average person. They're not, overly intelligent or anything, and they're just doing things out of this pure like enjoyment and they get from doing whatever sick things it is that they're doing. That is more terrifying, as a reader. And that would, to me, would make a villain seem like more of a villain because it's something that they're doing just out of like their own sick enjoyment of doing it.
Yeah. It almost brings them into the category of like a force of nature, which is just like this horrible, like I can't do anything. I could maybe reason with the intelligent guy, but like, what do I do with just somebody who likes killing people?
Yeah. Yeah. Or how about villains that are just good at their job? I think that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit, but another excellent example of a villain is Hans Landa, another Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards, who's just very, very good at his job. He's a Jew hunter. If you haven't seen the movie, the first 10 minutes are absolutely phenomenal, and the actor won Best Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. But
Christoph Waltz is another person that just whatever he's in, sign me up.
Crazy good, but yeah, he could just be. Because at the end of spoiler, but like at the end of the movie, he's just like, okay, I'll switch sides, not a big deal, So it's not like he's innate evil, And I think this is a great topic because sometimes we do think, okay, he has to be brilliant, but not necessarily. I mean, that character absolutely is brilliant, but
there's a good it's one of those things. Like there is a good spot in whatever, like some books or movies or whatever for the intelligent mastermind evil person, but that's not for every book, every story. Like, I mean, it very much changes the themes of something to, if you insert into Saw just somebody who enjoys killing people as opposed to somebody who's like trying to do it for a purpose and has this big plan, like it very much changes the themes of that. And whether it's, that or talking about Weyland Yutani having a big master plan for what they're doing, or even David on the back end of like why he created the xenomorphs, like that versus just the xenomorphs on their own. Like it's very different, stories.
I had a great point and now it's gone.
I'm sorry, I did that.
No, it's no, while you were talking, I was like, oh, here's something. Anyway. Yeah. Well, what else are there about crafting a perfect villain that we need to know about, that we need to discuss?
I was going to use this for my don'ts, but I'm just going to throw myself under the bus here and use it now.
I guess is it time for our don'ts? Are we doing my? We can. I
mean,
know.
we can. It's getting close to that time.
Okay. All right, Holly.
Kick us off.
Okay, so don't make your villain necessarily have all kinds of like dark and scary features. Because there is a time and a place for it, absolutely, I think. But I think that some very terrifying villains for me are, people that are, it's not the way that they look, but it's the way that they laugh, or it's the way that they, have a coldness about their features, or the way that, an emotionless way of saying things. And those kinds of things can help you really deepen your villain. So don't just rely on a physical attributes like, the dark hair and the dark features and things like that, and they're pale skinned, and, every villain doesn't need to look like a vampire. There's other layers to a villain.
Your vampires don't even have to look like vampires. It's fine.
They really don't. They can glitter in the sun,
No, that is one thing that they are not allowed to do. They must burst into flames or nothing.
But yeah, I feel like don't rely on those like things that you actually see. Go deeper on these villains and find out like things that, if you can scare the crap out of someone by the way that your villain acts or treats other people before they really know what they're like physically, then that is a huge deal. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
No, yeah, no, I think that's, just what we're talking about. Like, don't make them stale, which is not my don't. I'm just saying, like I feel as readers, we love intelligent villains. I absolutely, in fact, when we're crafting our stories, I often, as soon as I'm like, okay, I want a hero to do this and that, and then I start making the villain before I even fill out like a plot line or anything like that, or an outline for, like, I want a great villain. I love villains, so that's where I'm starting. So yeah, you're right, Holly.
I think they're definitely harder. They're harder to do as well than it is like a fun, charismatic character. And I think about all the times when I've read a book and I've like read a character's line and I will literally be like, like laugh out loud because it's funny. But how often are you sitting there and you're reading something and you're like, this character really creeps me out. Like if this character was here right now, I would be, and I think that's, maybe a testament to some really, really great writing is that those more difficult minds to get into, the rest that can get into them, you can definitely tell the difference.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in there. And I'm going to say, in the same way that your antagonist doesn't have to be a villain, the villain doesn't have to be the antagonist. Like, get creative with it. Maybe the villain's like a side character and like that's not the main plot point. And it's like they're like in this whole thing and like the world's gonna get blown up. But like the real antagonist is that like, hey, Karen that works 2 departments over is like trying to steal my job. And like I don't really care that the world's ending. Or make the villain the main character. Like, and you don't have to go all mega mind with it and make them redeemable or anything either. Like you can just be like, no, he's the villain, but he's got the most interesting perspective for this whole story. And I'm not going to redeem him. I'm just going to like go through this whole story, and he, whether he wins or loses, that's who you're getting this as like your POV. So like, just get creative with it, do some different stuff, and like worst case scenario, it turns out weird and you change perspectives. It's not hard to rewrite a whole book to change perspectives. Like it's really not. It's fine. It's fine.
We're already going to rewrite the book like 3 or 4 times. So
exactly. And it's a good exercise too to be like, well, if I was stuck in this person's perspective, like I'm going to make it interesting. And then if you do flip perspectives, it's hard to not make that character interesting because you've devoted so much time to their point of view.
Christopher, what do you think?
So I actually have 2.
Oh, excellent.
So
Thank you.
don't martyr me. It's just,
Yeah.
the first is don't be afraid to get to the dark night of the soul for the antagonist, and and make them feel like all is lost. I mean, I'm sorry, the protagonist, and make him feel like all is lost, and just take him down to the bottom of whatever he's got. I know in the one I'm currently is with my editor right now. I mean, it's pretty gruesome, and he has to do some horrible things to come back out and live, not just to make sure he continues on for the next day. So that's number one, and number two is make sure you stay consistent. If any of you watch The Acolyte, I would not suggest it. You'll miss 8 hours of your life.
Wow.
It just got canceled too.
Yeah, well, deservedly so.
Wow. Ooh, Austin has something to say about that.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, don't. Well, let's just say that the main villain in the show, it starts off, she changes perspective and her motivation. I'm gonna be good today. No, 5 minutes later, I'm gonna be bad again, and then I'm gonna be bad, and then I'm gonna be good, and I'm gonna be bad, and she flip flops more than a politician, and it's terrible. It's stay consistent. If a person's gonna be bad, I'm not saying don't give them redeeming qualities.
Right.
Just make sure that motivation that started with plot A is carried forth and seen through. You can change the perspective. That's fine. And say, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. But don't change back 5 minutes later and say, oh, you know what? Maybe I am bad again. It's okay.
Yeah, I will say that like the only way I could maybe see anything like that ever working is if it's like a chaotic evil where it's like, oh, you know what? I see that my best interest is helping the good guy right now, but make it very clear during the process, I'm still super evil. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to help the heroes. And then like, we're in the middle of the thing. We just saved a guy. I'm going to shoot all the other bad guys. And it's like, oh wait, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm the bad guy. Did you forget? Like,
yeah,
that's a great point. Great point, Austin.
Yeah. And Christopher, as our special guest, you are allowed to have as many don'ts as you want. So thank you.
You said donuts, right?
I did say donuts. Here we go.
This
happened a few episodes ago where I think I started that donut and then donuts, and we spent like 10 minutes talking about donuts. It was hilarious.
Oh man, my daughter is obsessed with all the fancy donuts right now. She's like, I want a unicorn one. Like they do all the crazy ones near us. So I'm like, okay.
Austin, I'm going to guess that you have a very young daughter because you remember the Goofy movie, and up to about 2 years ago, I was forced to watch that every day on the Disney Channel. Oh yeah, Max and the girlfriend, and I'm just like,
I will say though,
power cord.
Yeah, if you ever like. If you ever want to see, like, just have a spark of joy, the concert, put him next to Bruno Mars. Just Google it, and it's side by side, spot on. It's fantastic. So, like, same costumes and everything. It's great. I think he was inspired. So, yellow jumpsuit. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, my don't would be, since I love. Wow, where did that come from? Since going through puberty again. Since I love crafting villains, I would say don't forget to write out a nice backstory for a villain. That doesn't have to be as exposition in your story, but just for you. Like what made him a villain, right? Like all his little motivations, all the little revenge plots he has, and all these insecurities he has, all that stuff. Especially if it's fantastic, especially if something did happen, and where he made a left turn instead of a right. But write that out for you so that so what we're talking about here. So he's not like a paper villain, but he's layered like a can of Pringles. You keep going for more in there. So that'd be my don't forget to do that. So
I do my writing in Word. And so what I like to do is I leave all my characters as like chapter headings and have the running navigation on the side. So if I'm, down on chapter 30 and I'm thinking about a character, I can just click on them and it will bring me right back up, and I can read through their backstory and make sure that what I'm writing, in chapter 30 is really aligning with who my character is supposed to be.
Ooh.
And that to me is like such a quick reference. I'm not leaving my writing doc and going to a different tab or whatever. It's all right there. And the best part is that if you have all that at the beginning of your novel, when you get to the end and you're like, oh my gosh, I wrote 125,000 words, and then it turns out 25,000 of those are character notes, you're golden. It's a win-win situation.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I love having
good.
glossaries and stuff now. So that's been so helpful. So I love that you mentioned that. So
it's funny because I'm sorry, Austin, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I also use Word, but I use campfire.org and campfirewriting.org. And on the side, you pay for a lifetime subscription. I think it costs me like $100. And I can write on my phone. I can write on my laptop. I can take it anywhere I can log in. Maybe even, different places that you're not supposed to be reading between the lines. But at the same time, it gives you that whole breakdown. It gives you world building on the side. It gives you have to pay for those various things, but the characters, the cliff notes, what their backstories are, their age, their biography, all that stuff is included with campfire.org or Campfire Writing, and you just fill it in. And yeah, that's a great point, Holly. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I used to use a website called Yarny, but it's like defunct now. But yeah, you could have like a whole thing on the side where it's like, hey, here's important people, here's important places, and like have like little note cards on the side for yourself. It was so helpful. And then they were like, hey, we're going under. So like to this day, my Google Drive for all my writing is actually called Yarny because that's how it exported from there.
Wow.
So
oh, neat. Okay, or you can get dual monitors. I highly suggest dual monitors for your writing. Write on one and all your notes on the other monitor. It's brilliant. But
I'm old. I don't know do that.
No, okay.
I've got 4. I've got 4 monitors. So
he's got 4, yeah, and he's the youngest out of all of us here. But yeah, he's a kid. Okay, well, I think that we did our time for don'ts. Hey, Christopher, where can we find you again?
www.christophermichaelblake.com. I also want to remind you about the Indiegogo campaign for Crimson Harvest. Just www.indiegogo, and there's type Crimson Harvest in there. Crimson with a Z.
Perfect. I was writing this down. Okay. Furiously writing.
He wants to be the scarecrow. It's okay. He can be.
Yeah, you got to get in there quick.
It's actually funny. I feel like in another life I would have been into acting. I think the idea of it just is fascinating to me. And my cousin, his old girlfriend, she has done some acting, and I always thought that was so cool. I was like obsessed. I'm like, oh my gosh, is that just absolutely amazing? And she's like, it's really fun if you love it, but if it's probably like writing, if you don't love doing it, then it's probably the most exhausting and painful thing ever.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I've thought it would be cool to do like the voiceover stuff. So whether it's like actual acting or doing like the narrations and stuff. So I don't know. We'll have to check it out.
I actually had to do an interview for work this past weekend. I was at a big event in Las Vegas, and this was my first time. It's different on a podcast. I don't know why. This is my first time like in front of people in a professional atmosphere, giving an interview, which I was informed I was doing the day before I gave the interview.
Classic.
And so it was like, I'm like, how are people on camera like this all the time? Like I didn't know what to do with any part of my body all of a sudden. Like it's really an interview is just a conversation.
Right.
But it was so funny. Huge props to anyone who has a good acting career, knows what they're doing, because it's an experience.
It's an experience. Yeah. Well, let's do this. Crimson Harvest is looking for actors. New actors are best because that means they won't get paid as much. So
they're not getting paid at all. They paid the movie actually on Indiegogo.
Oh, they actually.
Yeah, you gotta pay for your part. You're buying. Your part.
I would pay for my part. Oh,
yes. 100% of the proceeds do go to the movie production.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
That's actually a really, really cool way of doing it. I never really thought about that, but that is really cool. We should start doing that with books. We'll be like, I'll put you in my book. That's gonna cost you.
They actually do that. Yeah. So I've gotten letters where they're like, "Hey, I'll put your name in a book," and I'm like, "Okay." Yeah. How many named characters are in your book? 3,000.
Yeah.
Look,
and
wait till
you should all go check it out.
Podcast next month. I'm telling you, it's going to be. Wait till the news.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to list that.
Well,
Okay.
please keep us updated because I'm very excited. Again, always
Thank
in
you,
for
hon.
a good horror movie. So,
Yeah.
or anything scary related.
Yeah. Crimson Harvest, Indiegogo, and ChristopherMichaelBlake.com for his books. So we would love to have you on again, Christopher, especially when Crimson Harvest launches. We got to all go
Mhm.
see it together, and or wherever it may be streaming or however. But
It is
Yeah, we'll have
lined
to have
up
a
to be
movie night.
it will be lined up for a theatrical release. I do know that.
ooh,
So,
wait.
Perfect.
yeah. Now whether that's could be extremely limited or
Yeah.
it's
But still.
That's amazing.
Um,
Congratulations again. That's very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Christopher also has Real Geek Media, which would be REEL, right? Geek
that's
Media.
correct. Yes.
Real Geek
Yeah, I'm
Media on YouTube.
I'm the bald guy. I'm that bald guy. FBD.
Okay. Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, so we're gonna look for your movie, your websites, and we're gonna have you on again. So folks, don't forget to subscribe to our channels at the links below so you don't miss any of the Writers Room content. We always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question for Michael or horror or crafting a villain or any other topic you want us to get into, please get in touch with us. Until then, we will bid thee adieu. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.